Love is in the N2-O2-Ar-CO2-Ne-He-CH4 is the 13th episode of the 27th season of The Simpsons, directed by Mark Kirkland. I won't be saying that title again. It is, of course, a pun on Love is in the Air. And this one focuses on Professor Frink. And I really like the narrative with him. I'll talk about that in a moment. But very briefly, we also have a narrative where Marge, Bart and Lisa and Maggie go to visit Grandpa. It's set around Valentine's, and the residents of the retirement home have been given this new medication that actually makes them hallucinate, and it makes them hallucinate their loved ones who have passed on. And Grandpa's obviously hallucinating Mona, and it kind of slightly touches upon whether this is morally correct or not. Like, I think most of us would take a pill that would make us hallucinate our happiest times with loved ones who are no longer with us. But at the same time, you're toying with people's emotions, and I feel like it could have been the main narrative, and they could have done a bit more with it and kind of made a bit more of a debate with it. But what we got was okay. I didn't love the scenes with Grandpa hallucinating because I didn't think they were that fascinating, but I liked the thought that it provoked, and I liked the fact that it kind of made me think, what would I do with that kind of situation? Is it morally correct or is it not? Obviously, playing with old people's feelings without their consent is a bit problematic, but once they realised what this medication did, some of the characters, namely Abe, wanted to keep taking it, and I thought it was fascinating enough, but they could have done more with it. The main narrative focuses, as I said, on Professor Frink, who is very lonely and who wants to find a woman, but with Homer's help, interestingly, he realises that who he is not what the average woman is looking for. So he changes his appearance, his voice, by using science, of course, and starts to go on all of these dates. And ultimately, what happened with that narrative I loved, but I'll talk about that in a moment. I do like Professor Frink. It's not very often he gets that much attention in an episode, so I thought it was quite nice to have him as the main focus, even if when he was the main focus, he wasn't himself. And of course, you shouldn't change who you are to find love, because chances are that means the people who are attracted to you are not the kind of person you'd want to be with. And I really enjoyed watching his journey, and I thought it was pretty decent. It was a bit slow. It was a little slow to begin with, but once it got going, I found it to be quite fascinating, and ultimately I thought it was pretty decent. So, a spoiler from now, I'll explain ultimately what happens with Professor Frink's story, because I found it to be really interesting. So at the end of the episode, Frink has found a way to bring all of these women together, and also the eligible bachelors in Springfield, and he basically said, you shouldn't be with somebody who you're not actually destined to be with. There will be somebody out there for you. And the lesson there, of course, is that you shouldn't change who you are to be with other people. You shouldn't be with people you're not meant to be with just because you think you should behave a certain way, and that there is, in theory, somebody out there for everybody. And also that loneliness is universal, and that we all experience loneliness, even though when you're lonely, you feel like you're the only person in the world who is lonely. Because if there were other lonely people, why aren't they making each other not lonely? So I think there were a couple of good messages at the end there, and the journey was quite pleasing too. Not a bad episode. I don't think it's one of my top 5 from season 27, but I still had a lot of fun with it, and I'd be happy to watch it again.